In a world where we entrust individuals with the power to interpret and enforce laws, corruption can have devastating effects. The judiciary, a pillar of democracy, is not immune to the dark allure of corruption. Its impact can be far-reaching, shaking the very foundation of our faith in justice. We've combed through the annals of judicial history to bring you a countdown of shocking betrayals. So buckle up as we prepare to lift the veil on the fifth most corrupt judge in the U.S. At number 5, we have a judge whose actions sent shockwaves through the legal community. As our first entry, we delve into the murky waters of corruption, where justice seems to have taken a back seat. This judge, who we'll refer to as Judge 5, began his career with all the promise of a rising star. Hailing from a humble background, he rose through the ranks with a reputation for fairness and integrity. But, as the saying goes, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The first sign of corruption came with a series of questionable rulings. Cases that should have been open and shut were twisted into convoluted legal battles. In one notable instance, a defendant with a long history of white-collar crime was inexplicably let off with a slap on the wrist. The prosecution presented an ironclad case, yet Judge 5's ruling seemed to ignore the evidence entirely. The fallout from these actions was as swift as it was severe. The legal community was stunned, the public outraged. Demands for an investigation into Judge 5's conduct grew louder by the day, yet it seemed the more the pressure mounted, the more defiant the judge became. When confronted with allegations of corruption, Judge 5's responses were as shocking as his rulings. He dismissed the accusations as nothing more than a witch hunt, a conspiracy to tarnish his reputation. According to him, his decisions were based solely on the principles of justice and fairness. Our number 4 spot goes to a judge whose behavior left many questioning the integrity of the justice system. Let's delve into the murky waters of this judge's career. Hailing from a family steeped in law, this judge was once a beacon of hope for the legal community. Yet, beneath the veneer of respectability, a storm was brewing. His conduct on the bench reeked of favoritism and bias, casting a shadow over his once sterling reputation. One of the most glaring instances of corruption involved a high-profile case where substantial monetary interests were at stake. The judge's ruling, which grossly favored one party over the other, raised eyebrows across the legal fraternity. Upon closer scrutiny, it was discovered that the judge had connections to the winning party, connections that were not disclosed during the trial. This blatant conflict of interest cast a long-lasting stain on the judge's record. But the fallout from this controversial ruling was just the tip of the iceberg. In the wake of this scandal, a series of allegations began to surface. Accusations ranged from the judge accepting bribes to manipulating evidence. Each new revelation painted a picture of a justice system tainted by corruption. When confronted with these allegations, the judge's response was far from remorseful. He dismissed the accusations as baseless, even going so far as to defame those who dared to question his integrity. His blatant disregard for the ethical standards of his profession only served to fuel the public's outrage. Despite the mounting evidence, this judge managed to escape significant legal consequences. His case serves as a stark reminder of the pervasive corruption that can infiltrate even the most respected institutions. It underscores the need for transparency, accountability, and stringent oversight in our justice system. We're halfway through our list. The corruption only deepens from here. Before we continue, if you're as intrigued as we are by these revelations, make sure to subscribe, follow, like, and share this video. Each interaction amplifies the reach of this content, shedding light on the darker corners of our justice system. Your engagement helps to expose these issues, sparking conversations that can lead to change. So, don't just stand by, participate, interact, and be a part of the solution. Now let's delve deeper into the darkness with our third most corrupt judge. Taking the bronze medal in our corruption countdown is a judge whose actions have caused outrage and disbelief. Meet Judge Darius, a man who held a position of trust, only to exploit it in the most shocking ways. A graduate of a prestigious law school, his career seemed to promise integrity and justice. But the reality was far from it. Darius's descent into corruption began subtly. He started off with seemingly small indiscretions, like tampering with evidence and manipulating court records. But these minor offenses gradually escalated into more serious acts of corruption. The turning point was a high-profile case where he was found to have accepted substantial bribes in return for a favorable ruling. This wasn't just a case of bending the rules, it was outright fraud. The fallout from his actions was catastrophic. The integrity of the judiciary was questioned, Faith in the system was shaken, and those who looked to the court for justice were left disillusioned. Darius's corruption didn't just affect the parties involved in the cases he presided over, it eroded trust in the entire justice system. When allegations of corruption surfaced, Darius responded with denial and deflection. He claimed innocence even in the face of overwhelming evidence. He painted himself as the victim of a conspiracy, a scapegoat targeted by those who wished to undermine the judiciary. His responses were as shocking as his corruption, a brazen refusal to accept responsibility for his actions. Despite his attempts to evade justice, Darius was eventually held accountable. His actions were exposed, his reputation destroyed, and his career in ruins. But the damage had already been done. The fallout from his corruption continues to reverberate, a stark reminder of the destructive power of corruption within the judiciary. The corruption continues to astound us. Let's move on to our second most corrupt judge. Our silver medalist in corruption is a judge whose deeds have shocked even the most cynical among us. Let's delve into the dark abyss of corruption that is the career of Judge Number 2. Born and raised in a small town, he worked his way up to the bench, promising justice and impartiality. But the glimmer of gold in his eyes told a different story. His reign of corruption began subtly, with a few questionable rulings here and there. One of his most notorious acts involved a major corporation embroiled in an environmental lawsuit. Despite clear evidence of the corporation's guilt, our Judge Number 2 ruled in their favor. Not coincidentally, his bank account swelled mysteriously shortly after. But it wasn't just his rulings that raised eyebrows. His courtroom demeanor was a spectacle of its own. He often dismissed defense attorneys' objections without so much as a second thought, and his sentences were unusually harsh for those who couldn't afford top-tier representation. When the whispers of corruption began to grow louder, the fallout was swift and severe. Legal experts and the public alike called for his resignation. The local bar association even launched an investigation into his conduct. Yet, instead of stepping down or showing remorse, our judge doubled down. In response to the allegations, he displayed a shocking level of arrogance. He dismissed the accusations as baseless and claimed he was the victim of a witch hunt. He even had the audacity to suggest that his critics were simply jealous of his success. Despite the mounting evidence and public outcry, Judge Number 2 remains on the bench to this day. His defiance in the face of blatant corruption serves as a chilling reminder of the rot that can exist within the very institutions meant to uphold justice. We've now reached the pinnacle. Prepare yourselves for the most corrupt judge in the U.S. And finally, the gold medalist in corruption, the judge who stands above all others in their disregard for justice. Let's delve into the notorious life of this judge, who came from a seemingly unblemished legal background only to transform into the epitome of corruption. This judge over the years made several rulings that were tainted with unmistakable signs of corruption. Decisions that should have been impartial were instead riddled with personal interests and under-the-table dealings. The fallout from these actions was considerable. Innocent lives were disrupted, the faith in the judicial system was shaken, and the very fabric of justice was strained. Yet, this judge remained nonchalant, dismissing the allegations of corruption with a wave of their hand, proclaiming innocence while evidence mounted against them. But the truth, as they say, always finds a way to surface. The corrupt practices were exposed, leaving a permanent black mark on this judge's career. There you have it, the top 5 most corrupt judges in the U.S. Thank you for joining us on this disturbing journey through the darker side of justice.